All right, well, let's talk to Emma McGordon now, who is from West Cumbria, a brilliant poet and storyteller, and was one of the recipients of the three Catalyst Awards that were dished out last year. Before we talk to Emma, actually, let's just Kate, you're the director of the Cumbria Arts and Culture Network, and it was a CACN collaboration that made the Catalyst project come about. So before we go to Emma, just give us a bit of background on what Catalyst was about and what happened.
So what happened initially is that I sat on the Cumbria Local Enterprise Partnership um, panel for the arts and culture sector across Cumbria. And over the course, actually, of a couple of years, we came to the conclusion that the local enterprise partnership came to the conclusion that they were able to offer up some money for some artist residencies that would just talk about, draw attention to, shine a light, and respond to Cumbria. And so, with the University of Cumbria and ArtGene, and Jo is here, she's just arrived. Hello, Jo
Hi,
from
Joe.
ArtGene. We applied together to host these residencies, and so we were awarded quite a big chunk of money that was destined for artists, and we created three considerable, significant residencies called the Catalyst Programme. And it was actually just over a year ago that we went out for an open call that was across the country. It was a national open call. We then had 250 applicants for three residencies, and Jo put in a monumental effort in particular to manage all of that. And then we went through the process of sifting and reading and listening and watching. Um, and we whittled it down gradually through a process of interviews, and we had an external panel help us. And in the end, we selected Jack McNeil, who is a Cumbrian clarinetist and musical director, composer. Also, Aswa Matala, who is lives in Lancashire, and she is a fantastic oil painter who does the most striking work about her own identity. It already exhibits in one or two major museums up and down the country. And not last but not least, Emma McGordon, who is obviously with us today, a poet, spoken word artist from West Cumbria. So it was a long process, but a fascinating and a very rich, rewarding process, and we learnt a lot from it. And actually, we've gone on to do more on the back of it, and we have more plans because of it. It wasn't a perfect process. We know that. But sometimes you have to grab the opportunity that's in front of you. So we did, and we learned a lot from it. Um, and amazing stuff is now emerging. So yeah, more when I have more to say about what's coming next, I'll be happy to say more.
And hasn't someone had a baby?
Yes, I
There's
beg your
been a
pardon.
Catalyst baby, hasn't there?
Well, actually, there's been two catalyst babies because Jack McNeil's
Oh, that's true, yeah.
wife had a baby last summer, and then just before Christmas, Azra had her first baby, so she's currently on maternity leave. Yeah, so it just shows you just never quite know what's coming, do you? But that's fine. We're not in quite the same rush as we originally were. But really, we created Catalyst because we wanted to give three artists just a big space of time with some money behind them to deliver their own, to develop their own practice. So if it takes a bit longer than we initially thought, because there have been babies and all sorts, then we're quite relaxed about it, really.
Okay. Could there be another Catalyst?
If somebody gave us another £75,000, yes.
Okay.
But I think we've learned a lot from it, and we would. But yes, we would love to create more opportunities. Of course, we would, and we'll always have our eyes out and peeled for that sort of opportunity. Yeah,
Eyes out and peeled. There's a
yeah,
thought. Okay. Metaphors
quite
mixed, that's fine.
possible.
It's Friday morning. Right, well, let's listen to Emma. Let's hear from Emma now. Hello, Emma. How are you? having just spoken
Oh,
about you in glowing terms.
your
You,
hair looks amazing, Emma. Don't
Yeah, your
worry.
hair looks great, Emma. Yeah, almost as good as mine.
It's not intentional, trust me.
So Emma, hello, nice to have you with us. Just introduce yourself to us, those that don't know you. How would you describe yourself?
Um, can you hear me okay? Because
Yeah.
I'm not kind of coming up on the screen. Um, that's a really hard question. I set off doing poetry on the page, and then I was lucky enough to meet some people who took me out, and I started performing it. And then I think over the last maybe 5 or 10 years, I've started to think of myself more as a storyteller because I realized that even when I was doing spoken word, it wasn't like other people's spoken word. And that was something that people were saying back to me. Some of the spoken word spheres that I've been in are very political, and whilst I can be political. I'm not. People will often say to me when they hear my spoken word about how rich the imagery is, and that they find it different from other types of spoken word. And I was like, maybe I'm doing something slightly different again. I don't know. But my stuff's very narrative based. So yeah, there's definitely an element of kind of story telling.
Okay, we might hear a bit of that in a minute. But so where did that all stem from, Emma? Was that a school? Did that start at school? Did that start,
Um,
in young life or?
Yes. So I went to a school in West Cumbria, in Whitehaven, and my parents were told I'd never be much of a reader or writer. I was doing things backwards. I was insisting that the word pig said gip, which is a memory my mother talks about a lot. So I was reading backwards. I was writing backwards. My handwriting was pretty illegible. So my parents went to the school. I won't name the school, and said, we're really worried about Emma. She's not learning to read properly, and she can't write. And the head teacher said, well, some kids just don't learn to read or write very well, and Emma's one of them. So I was written off of that. I was 4 years old, and
Do you
fortunately,
remember that? Do you
oh
still
no,
remember
I
that clearly?
remember. I remember trying to copy somebody at a spelling test. I remember that and desperately not knowing how to form letters. And I remember the frustration because I always like had a very rich internal kind of inner monologue and stuff, but getting words and stuff. Yeah, I remember that. And I also remember trying to learn to spell the word because, that thing that birds eat crumbs after uncle stops eating. And I had this whole rich narrative of my uncle in the garden with the deck chair and birds, but I couldn't write the bloody word down. So I had all this stuff in my head, and a struggle between the two to translate it onto the paper. So my parents fortunately took me out of that school, went to another school, and they said that I was a long way behind. Apparently, in the 80s, they did this little experiment with instead of teaching people to read phonetically, they did things with flashcards, and it just didn't work for me. So then they started teaching me phonetically, and it wasn't. I remember writing a story about a ghost and trying to read it to the cleaner, who's called Mrs. Wilson. And I remembered I had this brilliant story that I'd written. And then when I tried to read it back, it was so muddled up. I couldn't find the thread of it at all. And then by the time I was 7, still wasn't great at it. And the teacher, Mrs. Martin, said we were going to write a poem about autumn. And something just clicked. Something just clicked in me. So I knew, okay, autumn had like blackberries and farmers and all the kind of Cumbrian autumn things that I associated autumn with. And there was something about the way the poem was formed down the page that started to make sense. And I remember showing it to the teacher, and she kind of struggled her way through it. We had one Amstrad computer in the school that had green letters, and she said, "Would you like to type this up?" And it took me forever to try to find the letters. And then the head teacher put it on his door, and I thought, oh, I must have done something, like something good here has happened. And then there's a series of just like people that I ended up meeting along the way. Sometimes teachers who would like English teachers who had an interest in poetry or whatever and gave me notebooks. And then there was a poet called Barry McSweeney who was at Whitehaven Library that I wrote myself a note to my physics teacher to say I had a dentist appointment every Wednesday for the next 10 weeks. And I actually went to the creative writing class, and did that. And that was Barry McSweeney, he was a North East poet. He took me to Dulwich College when I was only 17, which is a very posh private boys' school in Dulwich. And I went and read there, which was weird.
How was that?
Weird. Someone went, and Tom Chivers went to set up his own press. He was a student at Dulwich College at the time. And then I went on a tour with him when I was in my early 20s. And the thing that Tom remembers most about my reading, when I was only 17, so we've got all these public school boys and me, and I was the only person who could get served at the bar. So that was the memory that Tom has. So yeah, I had a pint whilst I was there, and all these schoolboys were there with their whatever it is, they drink lemonade. But yeah, so that was my memory.
But that's it's fascinating to hear that story, and because you go into schools quite a lot now, don't you? I know you're in Bothell School
I was in
this week.
Bothell, yeah, I was in Bothell School on Monday. I was in Sedbergh School the week before that, and then I was in a school in Essex on Tuesday, which is
So
why I'm in the country.
do you, having had sort of perhaps mixed feelings about your own schooling, what's it like going back into schools?
Yeah, I really like working with primary school kids. Years 3 and 4 are definitely my favourite age to work with, just because they're kind of so creative and they're so they don't have that same kind of self-awareness. Like definitely once you get into secondary schools, like it changes.
Yeah.
But yeah, years 3 and 4 are just absolutely wild. Come up with crazy stuff, and yeah, I love it. It's really good. They're really I like kids. I like kids, and kids gravitate towards rhyme. Kids really like it. It really sets something going. And we were in Bothell School. We were actually doing haiku. We did gratitude haiku because it's
575.
that's the one. It's Childhood Wellbeing Week this week, so the school asked me if I could weave that in somehow. So we made postcards, and I taught them what haiku was. So yeah, we chanted 575 a lot, and they made gratitude haikus, which was a lot of kids in Bothell come from farming communities. So there are a lot of animals in our gratitude haikus, and the school are going to make a gratitude tree with the haikus.
That's fantastic.
That's
really
lovely.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the whole Catalyst project then, Emma. And in a minute, I think you're going to read us a little bit of the script of the film that you're making. But tell us a little bit about what the project is that you've decided to concentrate some of the resources towards.
So yeah, so I'd never done film, and I kind of jumped in at the deep end. So I had this script that I wrote when I lived in Cockermouth. I lived in Cockermouth for a while, and Cockermouth looked after me in a really big way. Like I will always have a sense of a spiritual home in Cockermouth that I didn't feel in Whitehaven. I felt like a really big outsider in Whitehaven, even though that's where I grew up. Whereas Cockermouth, and sometimes I've got this romantic idea that it's because it's where two rivers meet. So there's this idea of coming together. I wrote this script whilst I was working at Wild Zucchinis, that some people might remember, on Station Street. And they became my second family, not just the people I worked with, but the customers as well. And I felt really held in that space. And because of that, I was able to delve into writing about Whitehaven. So I couldn't really write about Whitehaven while I was living in Whitehaven. For a while, I lived in a flat above Chattanooga in Whitehaven, and that was quite a traumatic time for me. But then when I was in Cockermouth, even though it's only 15 miles, I had enough distance. So I started writing this script that was part spoken word, that was to do with coming back to Whitehaven after university, trying to figure out if I could ever belong there. I'd always had an interest in the history of the area. And because I'd worked at Florence, I had this mining terminology, because Gilbert, who I think he owns Florence, I would spend many hours with this old guy, like 89 or whatever he was at the time, and he would just tell me all this terminology about mining. So I was kind of absorbing all this stuff without knowing it. And then obviously that whole area is built on mines, and I'm interested in psychogeography and what the landscape does to people's psychology and things like that. And then I also weaved into that a kind of fictionalized relationship that kind of forms the script, that is an amalgamation of different stories some of it's my story, some of it's friends of friends have told me stories, some of it is just completely made up. There's characters in there that did not exist in real life, but are an amalgamation of many people I've met. Especially there's a character called Michelle, and she's this really, really kind of salt of the earth West Cumbrian woman. Now Michelle is an amalgamation of many people that I've known, and the humour, which has been really interesting, and that's why I wanted to work with West Cumbrian women, because it's a very particular humour. And when I'd scratched that script in the past, I'd worked with actors that weren't from West Cumbria, and they couldn't do that character because the humour is close to the edge. It has to be delivered in a West Cumbrian accent, otherwise it comes across actually as a kind of ignorance, but actually it's a very, very subtle and clever humour. And it's a humour I've only come across in women who are either from West Cumbria or who have lived in West Cumbria a long time. They kind of fall into it, and it's very witty, and I've used people that I know in real life. I was trying to kind of do their voices in my head when I was writing it.
Should we hear a little bit of it? Have you got something that
Yeah,
you could
so I
share
haven't
with us?
got that bit. Do you know what I should have done? I was thinking because we were trying to figure out whether we could show any of the
Yeah.
film. I don't know if I could just screen share.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would work with because I have got the opening part.
Amy, do you want to give Emma permission?
I don't know. I'll read a little bit first from this bit,
Okay.
and then I know last time I tried to screen share on the Zoom call, I think I shared an invoice with everyone, which was great. But I'm trying to shut down lots of it. I also have like a million. You can probably tell I'm neurodiverse, so I'm like got everything everywhere, and that's kind of what my screen looks like as well. So I'll just read this. This is part of the spoken word, and then I might try and do a screen share. So this is the character of the writer, which I kind of play as kind of a narrator. She'd moved back to the town of her womb years, smack bang in the centre of four-walled post-industrial decline, the edge of the Western Lake District, where sheep search the hills for answers, the sea batters the cliffs with questions, wave after wave, year after year, until the cliff falls, the sheep fall. Answers and questions fight to be heard in the wash of the waves, tug of the tide, to and fro that shape sandstone slabs on the beach, slabs that were once the upright, sun-facing cliff edges themselves, but all just sand, sand and seawater, lakes and low skies, laced with the diamond dust of coal. It was a town built on coal, with coal, by coal, coal and colder. So that's an
Nice.
opening bit.
That's lovely. Thank you for that. Lovely imagery. Let's see your invoices then.
I'm going to be really careful. Let me just see what I've got to open. Right, if you give me that, and I've got no glasses on now, which is not helping. So if you give me permission to screen share,
I think she's done that.
Yeah, you got permission.
is it share? It's not nothing's come up to say. Do I need to press OK or something?
You should just be able to use your share button at the bottom of your screen, probably.
Yeah, it says that you co-host at our end now. So.
Oh, dear. This might be something we have to come back to because what I really need to do is.
All right. Well, let's come back. Let's come back to that, Emma.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Let me
let's
just-
come back to that because I need to, at some point, if you speak to someone else, maybe I'll have to get my glasses.
Well, let me
on.
just ask you a couple more questions first of all.
Yeah.
And that is, so the Catalyst opportunity that's come along,
Yeah.
what's that allowed you to do that you probably wouldn't have been allowed or wouldn't have been able to do without that kind of space and time and capacity and frankly money to do stuff? How's that helped?
Work with other people. So I didn't realize how expensive film was. I could have taken the money and sat in a room and wrote some poems and done that if I'd wanted to. But what I decided to do was like something really, really difficult, which, yeah, that's the kind of way I am. So because I suddenly had this money, I was able to access other people's expertise. So I couldn't have made that film on my own. I'm not a filmmaker. So I was able to reach out to, I knew I definitely wanted to work with as many Cumbrian creatives as possible. So I had a woman from Wigton that I was working with, a woman from Cleatamua, a guy that I didn't know was in Workington, but he is. He's a sound guy who's doing all sorts of interesting things. He's a sound guy and a filmmaker. So I got to know him, and that's been a brilliant connection. Who else did I have? I'm working with someone who makes electronic music from Egremans. So all these different people I could have found, but then I would have had to be saying to them, listen, I want to do this. Can you do it for nothing? Right. And we all know in this industry, like that happens too much. Like, we want to be able to say to people, like, I've got this money, I can pay you X amount. It maybe wasn't like industry standard that I was paying people, but I would say, I've got this project, this is the budget, would you be interested in doing it? So I felt a sense of, I don't like asking people to do anything for nothing. So I felt a sense of like reciprocation, that I could say, okay, like the guy in Egremont who was making the music, we met in Cockermouth. We went for a coffee at Moon and advertising Moon and Sixpence. Other coffee shops are available in Cockermouth. And it was really great because, again, I started, we had some really interesting conversations. And because he'd grown up in Egremont, he really understood some of the script in a way that I wasn't anticipating. Because in the past, I'd scratched this script with people that weren't from Cumbria. And it was amazing to me, like, how the understanding of it was very different when it was people who were from Cumbria. And that was a huge, like, validation for me, that I was tapping into something that's very underrepresented. Like, we don't see ourselves presented or represented on screen. Like, there's very, I can't think of anything that's been made in West Cumbria. And yet, when I took those filmmakers out, the thing that everyone kept talking about was how amazing this place was to film. Someone just mentioned earlier about the light in Cumbria. I think the light on the west coast of Cumbria is equally, like, unique. Like, I mean, to be honest, we had a lot of overcast grey days when we were filming. We filmed over a 10-day period. And then the woman, Dorothy, who was filming for me, she said it was actually better that we had, because I kept apologising for the weather. I was like, Cumbria does have nice weather. Like, sometimes it's really amazing. And I kind of took on this sense of responsibility for the nature of Cumbria. But she said it was actually better because it allowed her to adjust her stuff on her camera in a way that bright sunlight wouldn't have.
How interesting. And the script had sort of been in a drawer in the desk for some years then. So the cast list opportunity allowed you to
That's
dust
right.
it down and think.
So I wrote it in Cockermouth, and I got some Arts Council funding to write it when I was there. And then I put in the second part of the Arts Council funding to produce it. And I didn't get that funding. And I had a very weird conversation with the Arts Council over the phone, where they told me I'd ended up accidentally in this political minefield, and the head of the Arts Council happened to have looked at my thing. And there was all this confusion over double funding. So they phoned me and they're like, yeah, apply again. Like, this kind of weird things happened where you've been used in a meeting as a political pawn. And I was like, how the hell does this happen to me? So the thing is, though, I don't recover very well from rejection. It takes me a long time. And that's partly what that script's about as well, actually. Like, I'm someone who, when I feel things, I feel them, like, very deeply, and it takes me a long time to pick myself back up. I don't think I have a strong resilience mindset or whatever. So when they said no, I was like, oh, well, that's it. It's not happening. Da, da, da. I put it in a drawer. And then it wasn't like till during the pandemic, and there's been a lot of weird coincidences with this script. I saw an open call on what was then Twitter looking for certain scripts, and I got in touch with the person, and it turned out she lived down in Shropshire or somewhere like that. But her dad was from Cleatamore. It was just this bizarre connection. So she used to holiday up in Cumbria because, like, her nana still lived there or something. So she knew the places I was talking about, even though she'd not grown up there, was very middle class, had a very, very different experience of life to me. And then it was from that, it was like during that pandemic time when I was taking it back out of this drawer, that I started adding this character who was this very, very West Cumbrian woman, Michelle. And that re-inspired me. I was like, I really like this character. Like, I wish Michelle really existed, because I'd really like to be friends with her. And she became like a friend during the pandemic. And I was writing this character, and she was, yeah, really, I don't know. There's just something about this character that was, it gave me permission to say things that maybe I wouldn't otherwise have said. So I had that. And I was always toying around and doing things with it. And then I made an audio recording of it. We did that at Rose Hill. But I never had the money to do anything big with it. And it was massive. I mean, as a script, it was way too long. So when that catalyst thing came about, one of the things that it said in the person spec thing was about not just having a one-off performance that would then kind of get forgotten about, some kind of permanence. And I was like, oh, well, I'd written this as a theatre piece, like, and that's not really what this is asking for. And I thought, I wonder if you could film this. So that's why I put in that
Okay.
application. That's how I did it basically. So yeah, it gave me that opportunity.
All right. Well, let's just finish off with so when is this film going to see the light of day, Emma?
Oh God.
When are we all going to get a chance to watch it?
Uh, so I'm hoping like maybe April time. I know with the timetable we had was like March, April kind of time. So at the minute, the guy from Egremont, Cedra, he's just sent me who Beth put me in touch with. Who you're going to speak to in a minute. So there's all these. I think that's what can be good about Cumbria as well. Like as soon as you start talking to people, someone will introduce you to someone else. There is a network that you can find there. Um, so Cedar has just sent me the music. I've got to go through that, and then it's got to get all these technical terms that I'd never heard about picture locked, and then it's got to get the sound mix. I don't know what this action is. That's what I think sound mixer looks like quite clearly. It's got to have that happen to it. And then what I would like to do is actually show it in private to a select audience, specifically these kind of West Cumbrian women, and I'd like to film their response to it, and then have that as part of the project as well. So there'll be the film, and then there'll also be the filmed responses of people to it. That's my kind of plan at the moment. So I'm thinking, yeah, like April time.
Right. Okay. Well, that's not very far away. That's
I
not
know.
very far away at all. That's very exciting. That's very exciting. Um, and it's just great to hear you talk about it and talk about its origins as well. And I don't know whether Kate, whether you want to reflect on, was that what Catalyst is all about? Trying to enable things to happen that otherwise couldn't happen, and also to have some sort of legacy for Cumbria?
Yes, I mean, in a word, yes. And it's just great to hear, uh, you know, the process that Emma's been through and how positively people have responded to that and kind of coalesced around what she wanted to do. So it's just really encouraging and positive.
Yeah. And Joe, do you want to? Joe obviously was part of the art gene panel that did a ton of work on this as well. Does that kind of roughly where you were trying to get to with this project, Joe?
Uh, yeah, I think I just want to challenge Emma's, apparent lack of resilience. I think there's parts of this process that are less evident, perhaps. For example, I happen to know that a member of the Catalyst team at one point tried to suggest to Emma that maybe she'd taken on too much and that she should scale her project back and perhaps attempt not to quite realise her ambition. And I would say that resilience really came to the fore, and she stood her ground. She decided, that a mentorship is something that works both ways. And if you don't want to take your mentor's advice, you don't have to. And she's stuck to her guns. So I think that shows a terrific amount of resilience. And but the thing about Emma's work that speaks to me most, I think, is just that working class culture front and center. It's so rare, and it's particularly rare in the art world. I really, really value it, and I really think you should keep going because it's fantastic. Well done.
Great, great stuff. All right. Well, I can't wait to see the film sometime in April. She said we've got a recording of this conversation, so we'll see whether that happens. And if you want to try and find those screenshots while we're talking to Beth.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to run upstairs and get my glasses, and then
all
I'll
right,
be
okay, you can do that. We'll come back to that.
We're all a blur. But,
we'll come back to that at the end of the call. But for now, thank you very much for sharing all that with us. And it sounds like a great piece of work. So congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So while Emma scurries off to find her glasses or whatever it is she's going to find, let's cross to Beth. Beth Loughran-Layton. I hope I've got that pronunciation right, Beth. Who does a number of things, but more recently you work with Cumberland Council, and you're working on the Cumbrian Award, which just hearing Emma talk about how school is so influential in good and bad ways on where you might end up, particularly in the creative industries. The Cumbrian Award is very much geared towards young people. So let's hear a bit more about that. We've got some slides and we've got a film to show as well, Beth, and the floor is yours to tell us all about it.
Thank you. Yeah, and that is a great connection. Listen to Emma's talk and some things that other people have said in terms of the purpose and the mission of the Cumbrian Award. I have got some slides, so I'll try not to sort of speak about it all now, but yeah, that idea of bits that are perhaps not so easy to hold on to in the curriculum due to priorities, and yeah, so welcome. This is I think Cumbrian Award has been here before in these talks, so I'm new in post, which is a great sign. So the team is growing, and Danny G, who was the founder of the award, has presented here before. So I'm just here really to say hi again and remind about how the award works, and yeah, just open things up a little bit to see how we can all keep connecting and keep growing in an ever moving and ever changing way, as we've kind of just sort of talked about. So the Cumbrian Award comes in two forms. One is Cethra. We've already said Cethra this morning, not the Music Act, but the Cethra Award and the Dovera Award. So the Cethra refers to Year 6 completion in primary school, and the Dovera one refers to Year 9 in secondary school. And you can see those little stickers on this slide here, and they represent the three strands of the award that should be mapped onto already existing curriculum in schools. So it shouldn't be a case of asking teachers to generate lots of extra stuff and hold extra sessions and things like that. It should really kind of just get under the skin of the curriculum that's already there and just lift out the kind of Cumbrian essence that's available there. So if we have a little look at the next slide, please. So this is a little welcome from Danny, and I can see that some people already recognising Danny's name. So he's a head teacher of West Cumbria Learning Centre. So working with pupils with a range of needs there at that centre, and it was Danny who was struck by these bits of adventure and culture and the idea of innovation and enterprise that were kind of just getting lost off the curriculum or not so easy to prioritise. But all the same, if we don't have skills in problem solving, confidence, listening, leadership, creativity, then it's really hard to kind of use the skills that are really, so critical to learn, and things like reading and maths, but it's got to be part of a bigger picture. And this is a message that pupils will generally see in being welcomed to the award, if we go into schools and do a bit of a welcome assembly, and just scanning that slide and not doing a mega read if you can. It's all about opportunity, and allowing the pupils to really connect their sense of self in terms of where they're from, where they live. And this is actually how the award came about as well. Once Danny got the spark, he did do research among young people in the school that he was at, which is great. So this award is a response to this research, actually, in terms of asking pupils what it was like to be Cumbrian. And actually those results at that particular time, not necessarily going to be the same every time, were pretty bleak. And so the award is a response to that in terms of generating some pride more than anything else, as well as these kind of really applicable skills that are to do with, employability and life chances and things like that. There's also what is brought about by the sense of pride and as Emma was talking, that sense of identity and being seen and being reflected back. And if this is drawn out and pupils can connect, I feel like somebody said this in this talk, can't quite remember who said, connect to the lineage of past, but also stand in the now and realize that and innovate towards the future. That this is the chance we need to kind of hold space for and bring about for our next generations in post-industrial and post-industrial, when we think about the influence of Sellafield and on employability. And I know in this forum, we really think about that infrastructure for creative careers, but it is also about adventure and enterprise as well in those creative careers, in terms of how the strands interrelate. I'm sure you can all, some artwork is right out there in countryside, or at the award we say it doesn't necessarily have to be a countryside adventure. It could be an urban adventure. I mean, that might be my influence a little bit coming in because I'm interested in that. And also the idea of, business, entrepreneur style approaches, which are really, really important as well to sustainability. I'll have the next slide. Thank you. And this is all summarized by the mission, the simple sort of mission and tagline of the award is to be. And all of these words here that have be at the start, belong, believe, and become, really summarizes what I've just been trying to describe. And I know this is really based in the schools community. It's a head teacher who's founded this, and we work with a community of amazing school teachers, and the award would be nothing without their creativity and logistics of mapping it onto the curriculum, and also willingness to come along with something that's started off small but has grown and grown. And I think, as Kate was saying before, if you don't kind of just grab and go and try, even if it's not quite perfect, then we'll never get anywhere. And I think this is something in my role that I've sort of reflected back to the team that I think is great, that there's this ever evolving and practice-led way of making the award grow, kind of do it and try it. And as I say, the teachers really come along with that, and that really has to be recognised. And not that I'm really that well placed to talk so much about Ofsted and things like that, but belonging is now a new feature of the Ofsted framework. So we think that this could, this is an area that we could kind of join up even more and, provide some input to, really, some platform to for teachers who are trying to draw upon that element of Ofsted. The next slide. Thank you. So as I say, there's 3 strands: culture, enterprise, and adventure. And in the delivery of the award, if you're in primary school, you need to fulfill 2 quality experiences per strand, so 6 in total. If you are in secondary school, that would just lift a little to 3 experiences per strand, and you'd spend a little bit more time doing it. You track through a workbook, which has been something that's been used in the past, and they're actually currently in development at the moment. So the team last year did sort of draw from the community and different industries and sectors to input on those. And I know culture is the next one to be developed, which for those of you who know me know that I'll be able to be a geek about on that and help with. But also, just so you yourselves know that's in development, and don't be strangers in keeping in touch. I must leave my email in the chat. So there's the experiences and the workbooks that kind of stitch through these ideas around skills. So, for example, with adventure, it's about planning the adventure, preparing for it, thinking about how we feel about the adventure, doing the adventure, and then the really important aspect of reflection on what's happened, what went well, what skills do we actually realise we have got? We have got confidence, or there was a moment of creativity or leadership, and it's just drawing the people's attention to these things, and hopefully in a really kind of significant way in terms of working towards an award, which we try to keep as simple as possible, as I say, so not too onerous and just kind of latches on to things that schools are already doing. But yeah, there is I can talk a bit more about partnerships towards the end, but there is a new emerging element of skills with the skills builder framework, which is a thing, and is recognised by employers. And this is the idea of the award, that it's not just a nice thing to sort of have at school, but that it really positions pupils to take next steps after school, you know, whether it's education-wise or job-wise.
I'm just going to gently nudge you along, Beth, because we're just watching the clock.
Yeah, so actually these next slides are little impressions of things that schools have done. So you can kind of cycle through this one and the next two strands. Thank you. Next slide. So enterprise. So you can get a little bit of an impression. I can remember somebody's actually on not screen time as well, so I should be describing the images. So we've got we had some children at the top of a mountain do an adventure. We've got a Kendal mint cake stall in a school. So it's really trying to draw upon these Cumbrian roots, and you know, we keep trying to get better at that, and links with, you know, Cumbrian practitioners has been really important. And again, it's very much evolving how that comes about, you know, artists going into schools and things like that. And as you can see with the price tag on there, you can kind of make the strands cross over. So you might find that you make something creative and then you can market that. Next slide, thank you. So along with the workbooks, there's now little short passport books for schools that the children can hold in their hand and put a sticker in once they achieve a strand. So this is generated, an idea generated through feedback from schools from the past few years. Next slide, please. And these are the stamps that they can get, or stickers. And next slide. They are represented in the book in stonewall form. So this has been made before my time in post. I've sort of been around about a month so far, but it's constantly drawn on this idea of what's Cumbrian. Thank you. Next slide. There might be some more stickers come down. Then you can complete the wall with your stickers. So yeah, just to finish off, you can sort of hear that there's these ideas of partnership. The University of Cumbria is a significant one that's come through across the past year. When students, when and if they apply to university for 3 years full-time course, they will get a UCAS tariff reduction. And we're also looking at ways that employers can make similar pledges for if people may go straight off into work or apprenticeships. Currently, we're doing poverty-proofing research among the schools to make sure that there's nothing structural with the award that is causing unnecessary costs to individuals or to schools. We're developing the resources at the moment, as I say, and yeah, overall, the award is looking to be sustainable. There's people in post at the moment to kind of make it go, but the ultimate aim is for the award to kind of be able to be held, you know, in schools and in the community, in all of the different sectors, and kind of just work for itself, because as I alluded to as well, it's that idea about where the costs and fees and things come from. It's just about teeing things up so that it's done in the right way. And I think that brings me to the end, Tom.
There we go. Questions. Thank you very much, Beth. Just a quick one from me is, so how many schools roughly were involved already? Do you know?
Yeah, there's about 30, and they're coming on board more and more. So
Okay.
yeah.
So scope for more. And how can people on this call, perhaps, you know, particularly on the cultural badge, how can they get involved or support?
I think I'll leave my email in the chat. Maybe it's a case of maybe it's having listened to the talk, and if anything kind of piques your interest, it could be like, oh, that's a bit problematic, or how, because we're trying to work out how schools could pay for artists, or what if one school can, what if another school can't, and that kind of thing. So it's a conversation, I think, and we'd love to just hear and just make contacts, and you know, please drop us a line.
Okay, well, stick your details into chat now, Beth, if you can, just before we finish the call. Has anybody else got any questions for Beth about the Cumbrian Award while we're all here? Okay, well, if you can stick your details into chat, Beth, and we can come back and we can pick up with you. Yeah.
I will just say that I think it's really great that Beth has got this role, and it's really positive for the whole thing that somebody with a culture background, an arts background, is leading the programme. So I think it'd be great, Beth, if you could just keep coming back and telling us what's going on, and if there are specific opportunities that you want people's help with, then please, just keep asking, keep coming back, because I think this is really something that CACN, and I'm sure a lot of people here, think matters, and perhaps we can make a difference to in due course.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, and thank you for welcoming me onto the call so readily. And yeah, it felt, as Kate's alluding to, my background is dance, and I've sort of done that, played out at the university and here, and in some evaluation work as well. So yeah, it's something I'm passionate about, as we all are. But you can see like the wider benefits of not just for art's sake and culture's sake. It's about life chances and all of those parts of life.
We've gone full circle. Thank you, Beth, because Emma McGordon has now got her glasses on, I've noticed, which is exciting and promising. Does that mean that you're going to screen share something, Emma? She's on mute though. So
I'm on mute. I'm back. I'm going to attempt to do this. Who knows what might happen? So I think I just press this green share button, isn't it?
Yeah, and then it'll give you an option as to which screen you're going to share.
Yeah, that's always the green.
Emma, you might need to tick for share sound if you're sharing a video, just to let you know.
Is it just images or is it sound as well, Emma?
Sound as well, but where's the share? Hold on a minute. One party, multiple screen, advanced share. Do you have to go into advanced share options? No.
No. If you click share, there just should be a little box that you can tick that says sound. But it's different on everybody's setup.
Oh, yeah, I can see it. Share sound. Boom. Right. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, yeah, something's coming through, I think. Yes.
Okay.
It's full of itself, once filled with its own promise. Once the fourth biggest port after London, Liverpool and Bristol. A town that shipped in rum and shipped out its soul, its coal, sold its very foundations. It's not without its heroes, its myths, its legends. John Paul Jones, George Washington's grandmother, and the man who wrote Cher's last #1. Do you believe in life after love? I can hear something. And maybe it could have been something. But they say that the harbour lacked depth, so the bigger boats would never have been able to dock, and it was just so far away, with no real roads in or real roads out, that when the land was robbed, or raped as they say, in the language of work, the dialect of men, robbed of its soul, raped of its coal, it became so barren, hard, it fossilised, became nuclear. The hearts and the veins and the wallets of the town pumped with the pounded weight of plutonium, fast cars, fancy holidays, but lived cheek by goated jowl next to the hole-stitched pockets of children of the illiterate. Their fate falling on them slowly like the blue-grey curl of cigarette smoke in sunlit living rooms on dusty afternoons. Flat screen, hollow-eyed drug trance, depression. A town where suicide winked a silver lining to shine by a trick of the light to look like an answer.
This flat, I've made it nice.
And that's it really, of the bit that I can share.
Great. Strong stuff.
I don't know if I'm still sharing, Emma. Shall I stop that? Yeah.
Yeah, we got an insight into your life there. No, that was great. Fantastic. Emma, thank you. And great, you're great in front of a camera. That's not an easy thing to do. Lovely to have all those images and stills mixing in with the words that you're talking about. Thank you. That's a rare exclusive to what's going to come in April sometime for us all to see. Can't wait. Really exciting. Thank you very much, Emma. And thank you very much to Beth for this morning as well. Next week, by the way, Jack McNeil, one of the other Catalyst Award winners, is going to come on and tell us what he's been doing, how he's been splashing the cash, the Catalyst cash. And we're also going to hear from Val Armstrong, Radio Cumbria presenter for many, many years, now on CRFM. There's a new project that CRFM are setting up called Community Corner, which may be of interest to people to find out about. So Val, who I worked with for about 5 years, many years ago, is going to come and talk about that. And also the Writing Squad. So Katie Hale, who some of you will know, writer based in the Lake District. There's a project called the Writing Squad, which is very much aimed at young writers. So this is all, it all hangs together this morning, very much aimed at promoting young writers in schools in the north of England. So we're going to hear about what the Writing Squad is all about and how that can be helped to help young people in Cumbria too. So that is the plan for next week. Thanks for having your time with us this morning. It's been great to see you all. Catch you all again sometime soon.